Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast is presented by the Vintage Anime Video Network. Visit us at www.vintageanimevideo.com.
No way, Lita. Besides, I don't have time for a boyfriend with my schoolwork and computer class and being a Sailor Scout.
Come on, Amy. Sailor Scouts get to have fun, too. Anyway, I think you're just looking for an excuse. You're just scared because you like him so much. You keep him at a distance. You never let him know that you really go for him. This is your chance to let him know how you really feel.
I would never have the nerve. No way.
Well then, we'll just have to figure out another way to get you guys together. Amy, where are you going? Amy, wait up, come back.
I saw Greg.
What?
Where was he? There.
Huh? He must have gone this way.
Hello, and welcome back to Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Alex, and I'm really excited for this week's episode. I had so much fun editing it. It'd been about a year since we recorded now, so I haven't even seen it in a while, and getting reminded of it today was great. I hope you guys feel the same way. I do want to set up our clips for today. There's going to be one that's exclusive to the YouTube, so if you're watching there, yay for you. And the other one is going to be on both streams. So the first one on YouTube exclusive clip is a drag queen that I've seen before. I believe we may have chatted a little bit, and they sent me some things because I'm trying to put together Sailor Moon meets drag special at some point. I can't remember. I need to confirm if it's the same one. But their name is Rikku, and it's just, I keep watching it on a loop. So it's this really great Super Sailor Moon drag outfit, and you kind of see her move into the song a little bit. And then when it hits the beat, she does this twirl, and it transforms her into Princess Serenity, which is great. I like a princess transformation specifically. I think those are really cool. And something about the way that it just went so well with the beat and everything. And also I like the glitter detail on the before the reveal part a lot. So I just keep watching it. I'm going to put it in the video, so enjoy that. But that's the first one. And then the second one was just something fun I found on, I got to give you the right credit. Hold on. It's from Anime News Network, and they were going around asking people who the best Sailor Scout was and why. And I think when you hear the section I chose for today, at the end of the episode at least, you'll understand why I picked that one. So it felt very fitting. And here's the clips, and I'll see you in the outro. Bye.
Who is the best Sailor Scout and why?
Sailor Mercury, she's the only one that brought sensible footwear to fight the Negaverse. All the other scouts, they work with elements, fireballs, lightning. That girl's got bubbles, and she still shows up.
When I was a kid, I used to love her so much because I just loved how smart she was. She wasn't afraid to be, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer someday, or a scientist. Like, she just could do everything.
Okay, I guess we do need a break once in a while.
All right!
This week on Moonstar.
Their whole name is Frozan Pizzazz, like frozen pizzas.
That's even better.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Despite the title, I do think this is a great episode, and I really strongly encourage anyone who's listening along, try to find the deep version and watch it.
Yeah, one of the first jobs I had was cashiering and stocking at a liquor store.
And we get a really, really good speech from Sailor Mercury here that I'm going to insert because I think it's something that everyone needs to hear at some point. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm okay. It's been a wild month. I guess I've sort of discovered, I think I might have mentioned it last time, but I think I get, you know what seasonal defective disorder? That thing where you get depressed in the winter. You know what I mean? I think I get that in August because I've kind of noticed now, like I'm getting older and I'm like, I always sort of hit a lull at this time of the year. And I think because of where I live, we don't get snow or whatever, but it gets so hot here in August that you actually can't go outside and it like to the point where it hurts.
Yeah.
Or you're going to get skin cancer or whatever, you know what I mean? And then you sort of, in the same way, maybe in the winter up north, you get stuck indoors. It's like when you do go out, it's so freaking unpleasant that you can't wait to get home. And I was like, I guess logically that does kind of make sense. Because isn't that where it comes from? Is like being stuck in the house, not being able to go out and do things, right?
Yeah.
So it's been interesting uncovering that, but also I'm really glad that we are picking up on this episode because two things. It's the last volume in the Deke Season 1 VHS tape set. So this is Volume 10 that we're starting today. I actually don't think I ever watched this tape as a kid. I've only ever seen this episode on television or on like a recorded, VHS that was recorded a live broadcast. And I'm not going to give too much away because I think people want to listen to the end to hear how we rate stuff sometimes. But I kind of needed to see this episode today because it like whipped me back together a little. So I'm grateful to be doing this one. What have you been up to lately? Anything interesting?
Not particularly. I mean, you saw the videos I sent you from the show. The show I was at last Saturday.
Okay, I'm sure our listeners, because there's a lot of people close to my age group, will relate to that. Tell everybody what you sent me.
Oh, the show theme that I was at the saloon last Saturday night was for the Cheetah Girls. Because it's the 20th anniversary of the movie coming out.
I did not realize it was at the 20th anniversary, actually. So that's news to me. But yeah, the Cheetah Girls, and they did their like the first, it's like the most well-known single from the first movie or whatever. And it was who were the performers in it that you can remember?
No, I know all their names. There's 5. They're all people that are local to this area and in Minneapolis. It was Ken Doll, Lila Doll, Miss Frozanne, Carino, and Priscilla SUC.
Miss Frozanne is my favorite drag name I've heard in a very long time. That because it sounds kind of like Roseanne, and I grew up on that show. I know people like stuff has happened, but I'm just saying back in the day that show was like very profoundly unique. And why do you think they combined it with Frozen? Are they like, is their thing like Ice Winter stuff?
Oh, they're actually like their whole name is Frozanne Pizzazz, like frozen pizzas.
That's even better. Yeah. That's hilarious. Okay, I love a great pun name, and I like when I don't like when it doesn't have to be explained to me because sometimes they go over my head. You've heard of the Queen Sharon Needles, right?
Yeah.
It took me someone explaining it to me years after I watched that season several times to understand that that's a pun about sharing needles with drug use, which is not a good thing, obviously. But I literally was just like, oh my God, she likes the name Sharon and needles because she's spooky. Boo. And it's like, no, it's a pun. But yeah, no, that's so much fun. Yeah, I think, can they see that on YouTube? Do you think anyone uploaded it?
No, I don't think they really do that. But I mean, they always like share everything that anybody records of them. So it's usually just promoted on social media.
Look for it. Cheetah Girls drag. I'm sure you'll find something. Have you seen the movie?
Yeah, just not for like a really super long time.
When that movie came out, just for year references, this should be fun. 2003. It was released on August, right? Like you said, August 15th, because that was recently. 2003. How old would you have been then?
6.
See, I was probably like 13 or 14, I think. So I was like a young teen, tween age when it came out. And I don't know, this movie just really hit well for that age group. Do you remember watching it when you were young?
Yeah, like vaguely.
Was it fun for you at that age?
Yeah. I mean, I was more into... I was never, like, a really big Disney person, but there were some, like, live-action Disney stuff in the early 2000s that I, remember seeing, and that was, like, one of the main things.
Yeah, it's kind of known, I think, as the golden age of Disney, like Disney Channel specifically.
Yeah.
There's one thing I remember from that age that I was obsessed with called Zoog Disney. And it was just like a block of shows, but it was hosted by these cartoon robots, if anyone else remembers that. And there was one that had pigtails, but they were magnets for the hair. And she would like pull things into the screen with her little magnet arms. I freaking loved that. And I haven't heard anyone ever talk about it. So if anyone else remembers Zoog Disney, please comment, because I freaking love that. And it was like the Lizzie McGuire era, I think, they had a show called Bug Juice, which was like...
I know that.
Yeah, it was like a Disney Channel reality show about a summer camp. And I never really liked it at that age, because I wasn't into reality stuff then. But kind of now looking back, it would be an interesting study to see what it actually was like during those years, because it's been like 20 years or more,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's a fun time to explore. If you guys would like a Cheetah Girls special for a random holiday, you can comment, but we're going to do it anyway, so I'm just telling you. But yeah, tell us about it. Is there anything else you want to tell anybody about in the beginning today?
I finally have another... Well, I'm sure that we'll be talking again. Obviously, we'll be talking again before I do it, but I finally have another interview planned for the 14th. It's a sequel interview with like one of the most popular ones on my channel, with Amber Lee Connors, who's a bigger modern gen name in anime and anime games, and I'm talking to her again just because she's a playable character in Genshin now, so that's what it'll be about.
That's exciting. So more Genshin stuff, and then the sequels are nice because people get a follow-up. And if anyone, I think you said it's on the 14th?
Yeah.
This will have been out for a while then by the time people are hearing it. So go and look up the interview. And I recommend watching, if you haven't yet, the first one so that the sequel makes sense to you, because it's going to be right follow-up to it.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and check that out on Chris's YouTube channel. And remind me next time we do this at the top of the show, I want to talk about the first season of Big Brother.
Okay.
It was filmed in 1999. And during my depression episode, I sort of watched all 70 episodes of it. And it's the most fascinating thing I've ever seen. So we'll have to really dig into that. You ready to start the episode?
Yeah.
Today on Sailor Moon, Queen Beryl starts to recapture those unfortunate 7 who carried the rainbow crystals, including Amy's good friend Greg. But when Amy vows to protect him, it's a hardened Prince Darien she must vanquish. Can she possibly stop him? You just stay right there, and I'll show you.
The Deke title is Tuxedo Unmasked, which kind of doesn't make sense to me based on what happens today, really, because it's not like his identity was hidden, so I don't get that. What is the Japanese title?
I Won't Run Away from Love Anymore, Ami versus Mamoru.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think of both titles?
I mean, I like the Japanese one more because it lets people know that Ami is going to be probably more forceful and like stand up for herself, which you haven't really seen happen much in season 1 yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing I would do is remove the the colon Amy versus Mamoru. I don't need that because it's a spoiler. I think I Won't Run Away from Love Anymore is enough.
Yeah.
That it's kind of like, oh, who's that about? And then it leaves a little mystery and then you get to see it happen. But yeah, I mean, despite the title, I do think this is a great episode. And I really strongly encourage anyone who's listening along. If there are certain episodes where I'm kind of like, if you actually watch it with us, whatever, this is one I think, if you can, everyone should really try to find the Deke version and watch it. Because they did a great job with it. And it's worth just getting that experience. So let's dive in. How do we open this week?
It's with Rikku, which is a Matoki's girlfriend from the previous episode, and she's obviously one of the human reincarnations of the 7 monsters, and she's studying fossils in Africa, and then Mamoru as Endymion just appears before her all of a sudden, and uses the black crystal to trap her inside of it, and then it's shown that he has done that same thing with several other human reincarnations of the monsters from previous episodes, and that's what he's trying to do, is get all 7 back so that, well, we'll talk about why.
Yeah. What do you think of this specific, like, episode intro? Because it is sort of unique, right?
Yeah. I think it's cool. It's more... It makes it's another moment, like, rare moment in the original series where it can make it feel like a horror movie.
Yeah, kind of. It's a lot more spooky. The thing that stood out to me in the Deke version, they use a rarely used music sting, because there are certain tracks that are not used quite as often during the show, and we get several of them in this episode. But then the thing that stood out to me is the first person we see is a side character, technically, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's pretty unique. And also her design when we see her, the fact that she is being an archaeologist in Egypt or wherever she's supposed to be. I think they said Egypt in the Deke one. It's just like, again, character design that is not typical of what we're used to for the series so far, I think. Like having her in that outfit specifically and in that setting.
Yeah.
So it kind of was a change of scenery right off the bat, which makes it already a more interesting episode. And I'm going to ask you a little bit more later about the animation, but one of my favorite animated moments from season 1 entirely is this thing where Prince Darien is spinning the crystal and you see the different people he's captured. I don't know why. I just really love the way they did that. Did that stand out to you at all?
I mean, I thought it was... Yeah, I thought it was a cool thing to do.
Save telling us who the animator is just yet, but we'll get there. And then we jumped after this intro scene over to Amy, who's watching TV in her room. And again, I have 2 little animation notes here. I really like the way they do static across the board in this episode, and they use it in the communicator circles and on the television. And in the Deke one, it's pink. I don't know if it's pink in the Japanese, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. I love that they gave it pink static. I think that's cute. Because it's like, hey, it's static like in real life, but also it's still kind of magic. And then the other note is because of I guess it's winter time, or it's supposed to be right now, but I actually think we find out later, isn't that like Queen Beryl's influence or something, making it snow?
I don't remember that.
I don't know. I don't know. But what I mean, like later, like at the end of the season, but I'm not sure.
Oh.
So, but we get to see people in casual winter wear, I guess, which is something that, I don't see a lot in person. So every time I see it in a show, it's very cozy to me. And it's kind of like, ugh. Because I don't know. I love clothes like that. Did you notice anything about, like, in the terms of animation and character design yet, this episode?
I mean, I already knew who it is, but not particularly yet, anyway. There's some good stuff, though, so.
Yeah, there is. We jump after this little moment with Amy and seeing her, like, she's watching something on the television, actually. What was it? Do you remember?
It's a news report of Yumemi, which is the artist character that was also one of the human reincarnations of the monsters.
Yeah, her monster form, I believe, was Vina, the thing that dropped rocks when she drew them, right? The, like, angel thing. Okay. Yeah, I missed that detail because I was taking a note, so I kind of love that it's her watching the artist.
Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast, will return after these messages. And now, more Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast.
Hello, Anderson residence?
Hey, Amy, that you? It's me, Greg.
Greg, where are you? You sound so close.
Yeah, I'm just here for the weekend with my folks.
Hey, why don't you come over?
I can't. can't, Amy. But listen, turn on your TV, okay?
If you have any information, contact the police immediately.
That's Peggy Jones, the artist. She's one of the carriers of those rainbow crystals, and she's missing, Amy.
Missing? You mean like kidnapped?
Uh-huh. They're after me, too. I had a vision about it. The Negaverse is trying to round up the 7 crystal carriers.
Where are you? I'll get my friends and we'll come and protect you.
Thanks, Aim, but it's fate. I'll just have to try and keep outrunning them or something. Bye.
No, wait! Don't hang up! Greg!
I can feel you searching for me, but I won't let you find me. I just hope Amy can save the others.
Hey, wait, that was Greg. Yeah, hi, this is Lita.
Hey, Lita, we're at the temple. We need you to come over here ASAP.
Got it.
To update, Peggy Jones, formerly known as Lonnie Lanai, is missing. The discovery was made.
This episode gives character development not only to like certain main characters, but then all of these other characters that I think we assumed are kind of a one episode thing have another moment where you like, oh my gosh, okay. I don't know. It heightens things in a way that I really appreciate having them come back.
Yeah.
What's Queen Beryl's new plan? Why is she doing all this?
It's because once all of the crystals from the monsters are combined, then it'll make a super powerful giant one that is, large enough to not be controlled by anybody and be defeated. And I'm assuming this was cut in the English version, but when she's describing that in the original Japanese, after the watercolor image of the giant monster is shown, it shows 3 like red toned pictures of the Sailor Scouts, and there's slash marks that go, like bloody slash marks that go over all of them, and you can hear them screaming.
They actually kept that in, but I think they probably adjusted it a little.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised.
Because like do you remember when Greg, Amy, the bamboo monster that was Sailor Mercury's episode, and they had that thing where he like cuts all her clothes off.
Oh.
They show part of that. They just chop it where it gets like, quote, inappropriate.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what they did with this, where they gave us some of that and they either airbrushed out certain things or they toned it down in a way.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it would have been quite as violent. But also, when they showed that, I remember thinking, oh, that's kind of a lot for the Deke version. Okay. So I was a little, maybe you're right. Maybe they kept the whole thing. I don't know. Also, they call the monster that it's supposed to turn into the Invincible Shadow in the English version, which, I mean, I guess that means it's like undefeatable, so it's technically invincible, which would have been stupid because everybody knows that's like the worst thing to do with a character design. So anyway, we cut to one of my favorite micro moments of this episode at the temple. And the first thing we see is Chad and Grandpa shoveling snow. What's Chad's Japanese name again?
Yuichiro.
Say it. What?
Yuichiro.
Yuichiro? Did I say it right?
Yeah.
I don't know why that feels so weird. I feel like I'm like eating cereal when I try to say that. I don't know why. But yeah, I love, because it's winter, right? So we get this snow. So we get to see the temple covered in snow, which is a great animation detail. And then just, to me, it's like a little character thing of the idea of Ray and all of them being cozy inside while the men are outside taking care of shoveling the snow because Chad loves, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's a cute little thing that you can expand on with your imagination if you want to.
Yeah.
But what is really going on here? Why are we at the temple? What do we see?
It's all the girls meeting together and talking about Ami talking about the phone call from Rio and about what's going on.
Yeah, and they're trying to figure out, like, they're formulating a plan, like what to do. Mm-hmm. And what do they ultimately decide here?
Well, one thing too that Rio told Ami is that they should make sure that nothing happens to Ray's grandpa. And what happens after that? Oh, and then like after after he hangs up, he was going to ask her for help, but then he doesn't want to rely on her. And then, well, that was before they'd be at the shrine. And then when they're all together, Makoto like keeps urging Ami to go and find Rio and help him out with this.
Yeah, and this is sort of the first part of this episode where we see the Lita and Amy, or Jupiter and Mercury, connection, because they are, if you want to think about certain scouts having, I guess, if we're talking in terms of like video games, a synergy bonus with one another, I think that Amy, like Mercury and Jupiter, have that specifically. And it's because of episodes like this where Amy is extremely shy and reserved and is very much a mental, like, intelligent person, and that makes her afraid to kind of follow her heart sometimes. And yeah. Lita, I don't believe that Lita is unintelligent. What I think is she is very much more connected to her heart and to romance, and is willing to take risks in a way that Amy's not. So they complement each other very well in that sense, where when Amy needs it, Lita can be there to push her to go for the things that she really should go for. And then when Lita needs it, Amy can be there to help her think more clearly. And I think that type of a friendship is a very complementary example. And that's probably why they have that synergy thing, which we'll see a little bit more later in this episode. Can you think of any other examples of scouts, just for fun, besides Uranus and Neptune, that have a synergy thing going on?
Well, I think it doesn't happen very often, but I know in Super S, that maybe in S2, I don't know, but that you see Makoto and Rei together a little bit more often. Like I know in episode 139, which is the girl who's trained to become a swordsman, that when Usagi and Chibiusa get the call to go save her, that you see
with the like really intense mom.
Yeah.
That
episode, you see Makoto and Rei were out shopping together when they got notified about it. So you see it a little bit, but not as much as other ones.
Yeah, I think that one develops a little bit later, but also that same season they kind of choose to emphasize Makoto and Minako, or Lita and Mina's relationship in a way.
Yeah.
Where they're close friends to the point of being almost competitive sometimes with one another, which is also a true style of friendship that does exist in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not always negative. It can be, but it also sometimes those types of relationships push both people to be better. It all just depends on how intensely they take it, right? You guys in the comments, let us know what other scout pairs you think have good synergy. Throw out one more. I think that specifically, and you'll have seen the episode by now, but Venus and Moon actually have a synergy that goes really well together. It's just not shown often in the show for some reason, but when we see it, it's like very clearly there. But that's another one that you have to kind of dig for. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Oh, and then after this scene where they decide that Amy's going to go after, actually Lita goes downtown to look for Greg. We see Darien walking around with, like, I think it's supposed to be a leather jacket. And I kind of liked that they put him in different clothes here too. And he approaches Greg on the street. And what happens between them?
He basically just says that, or Rio says that he knows who he is. And then Mamoru says that, oh, well, if you can see the future, then you know what's going to happen. And you should just come with me quietly. And then Rio starts shouting that he needs help. And then so a lot of the civilians around them just crowd around Mamoru so Rio can run away.
Mm-hmm. And I remember watching this as a kid and thinking that was kind of a great idea in a way. I don't know how, literally, that whether or not that's, if you're, like, being confronted in public, if that would do anything. But I have to assume that, at the very least, if you're speaking calmly to the person who's, like, is trying to hurt you, or is who's basically, because Darien was like quietly threatening him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if someone ever did approach you like that in public, I think the shock of you speaking to them calmly and then suddenly starting to shout loudly even if it was fire or help or whatever you say, that will attract enough attention for a second that if you want to just disappear into the crowd, you probably could.
Yeah.
So I think in a way it's a good strategy, although I wouldn't depend on anyone to actually come help you. It's more use it as a distraction to move yourself out of the situation, right?
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast, will return after these messages. And now, more Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast.
I sense him. The sixth shadow's close by. Right on time. Hello, Greg. Sorry, you must have mistaken me for someone else. Oh, come on, don't play innocent. It's pointless. I really don't know what you're talking about. I thought you were supposed to be so smart. Some kind of fortune teller with visions of the future? Now, come on, tell me, Greg. What reason could I have for talking to you? You want to take me back to the Negaverse with all the others? You got it, Greg. So you must know there's just really no point in fighting me. Oh, I don't have to fight you, you Negaverse lackey. The way I see it, I get away from you without exchanging a blow. Don't insult me, boy. Your shades are blinding you, geek. Huh? Someone help me! Stop this guy, help!
As Greg is running away, we get another great musical moment that I love. It's a little rare because they use a specific intro to a track that's used more often, but they don't always use the intro to it. And I love the intro, so I'll put that in here.
I can't let that creep catch me. Who's there?
And who shows up in the alleyway in front of Greg?
Jupiter and Mercury. Oh, since you're not mentioning it, maybe there's a cut that, because before that, like on the opposite side of the street, Ami and Makoto are walking, and then Ami says to Makoto that they should just go home, and then Makoto goes on this, I don't know, rant kind of, that telling Ami that she's actually in love with Ryo and that she shouldn't be afraid to be in love with him. And then Ami suddenly sees Ryo like running on the other side of the street, and then that's when it goes to the scene that you just mentioned.
No, they didn't cut that. For some reason, I skipped over that with my eyes. Yeah, I wrote about it because there's a great moment in this that is so... It's like... I have to admit, it's a little bit of a cringy joke, but it makes me laugh because I just... I can't believe they put it in here, but Lita goes...
Ever heard of that river in Egypt, Nile?
To Amy, and that's like... I don't know if people still say that, but that was such a serve back then. You know what I mean? Like, you say that to your friend and you're like, ooh, I really got you good, zinger. And it's like in 2023, it's like so lame. But it just tickles me so much because they're having this really serious, heartfelt moment and Lita just throws that out.
Yeah.
And then Amy doesn't really react to that joke like you might expect. But yeah, they have a sweet moment. And this is what I was referencing before, where we get to see more of Lita complimenting Amy's personality in this, like kind of encouraging her to pursue Greg a little more strongly, right? But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That was a really special moment, I think, in this episode. So we're in the alley now with Greg, Sailor Mercury, and Sailor Jupiter, and then Prince Darien also appears. And Mercury and Jupiter split up here. What's the plan?
Jupiter is planning to fight off Mamoru while Mercury goes to get Ryo to safety.
Mm-hmm.
There's they've since became iconic. There's those two frames of Jupiter posing her hands in a fight stance, and those are actually based off of Bruce Lee. And then after that, she uses Supreme Thunder, which Mamoru just effortlessly dodges. Before they start fighting more, it cuts to Mercury and Rio again.
And just like touching on the animation again, those frames you mentioned, they are... I think that, okay, anyone who has ever tried to draw seriously knows hands are one of the most difficult things to get down.
Yeah.
I can't draw hands properly still. I don't practice that much either, but like that was always one of those things. And I even have heard people criticize Naoko Takeuchi's art style, like in the manga, that her hands are a little funny looking. I never noticed it personally, but it's a thing people take umbrage with. I don't know. So the fact that they were able to do that with Jupiter and make it look so good and so accurate, I think speaks very highly of the animator who did that. And also, I really love the energy of Jupiter just going to take him on by herself. It's very classic for her character.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so there's a lot of like little jumps that happen here in this part of the episode, so it's kind of hard to organize how to talk about it. Hold on a second. Yeah, I wanted to say during the fight, with this first part of the fight with Jupiter and Darien, we get another unique music moment. I think I just enjoyed the sting they use here as well. I did say though, there was the way the movement was happening. You know, the chops, that Darien was doing with his hands. He was like doing karate chops, and she was dodging them.
Yeah.
That part, the like movement of it was a little bit odd to me, but it wasn't anything to do with the like character design or the way it was drawn. It was just the way the movement was happening.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that did stand out to me a little. But who wins this battle ultimately?
Mamoru. He acts like he's going to seriously do a final blow against Jupiter, and then he just stops his fist right in front of her face and says that, come back, we should do this again once you're more experienced, and then he just walks away and disappears.
Yeah. And I think that's just an important note that in the one-on-one battle between Jupiter and Prince Darien, Jupiter lost. So, technically. And then we're back to Amy and Greg for a brief minute running through the street. They spot an amusement park and decide to go there. And there's also... and then we see Serena and Luna bump into Sailor Jupiter, who's just running down the street like as Jupiter among a bunch of people, which I thought was sort of funny. Did you think about that?
Yeah, I think the reasoning that I would put in my mind is that, I don't know, maybe civilians just think that they're, at least in that case, since one of them was in their sailor form and then Usagi was normal, I think they would probably just perceive it as somebody cosplaying.
You think so? Because I was wondering about that, because until this episode, it seems like unless they have to save a civilian, they aren't really doing scout business in their presence that much.
Yeah, right.
Like some, like accidentally sometimes, but it's like I think it's the first time we see them blatantly just like in a crowd like that.
Yeah.
So that stood out to me a little. And we're right back to the amusement park now, which is a great setting this episode, I thought. Amy and Greg here, they have a great conversation in the Deke version that starts out with them just kind of talking about how they're both too shy to say how they like each other, and then gets into what's going on with the Negaverse and all that. And Greg tries to say something about how he's going to sacrifice himself. And we get a really, really good speech from Sailor Mercury here that I'm going to insert, because I think it's something that everyone needs to hear at some point.
That's really sweet of you, but I can't let you do that for me. I'd miss you way too much. More than I do now. Anyhow, sacrifice is very noble, but it isn't always the best answer. You've got to think it through.
You think so?
For sure. I mean, it's almost like giving up. Or running away because you're too scared to face the consequences if you do stick it out. That's why I always ran away from you. I was scared of getting hurt. So I just pretended I was more interested in everything else I had to do. But I don't want to give this up. We've got to fight, Greg.
I think sometimes in our society, we celebrate people who put others in front of themselves to their own personal detriment. And I think there is one thing to be a selfless person in the sense of, as long as you're healthy and you're okay, then you use the extra energy you have to try and help others. I think that's fantastic. When you get into toxic people pleasing, though, and toxic self-sacrifice, where you're making decisions that affect you poorly to elevate other people, and then over time what happens is it compounds and you're left with nothing, and then you can't help anyone, let alone yourself.
Yeah.
So I think what she is saying is very important, because yes, self-sacrifice can be noble, but it oftentimes isn't the only option, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And usually if you take a second to think things through, there's a better path, right? Before we get into the battle that comes next, let's talk about that a little, because I think in our culture we all are people pleasers at some point, at least for a brief period, or at least in a specific social situation, even if it's like isolated for some people to a smaller experience.
Yeah.
Can you think of any examples from your past that you might want to share where you felt like you were pushed into a position where you kind of had to do that?
Yeah. One of the first jobs I had was cashiering and stocking at a liquor store, and which was a really bad idea to begin with, because I barely drink, and there were times like domestically with my family where, you know, really bad things were said to me under the influence of alcohol, and I really only got that because that was like the main liquor store that my parents went to in our hometown, and they like my mom talked to the owner a lot, and it was just, it felt like a pressuring kind of situation. I was only there for one shift before leaving, so that's one example of that kind of situation for me.
I think that's such a good example because of the Sailor Says that comes up later, because it can give a mixed message, because they have two different messages in this episode. And I actually think what you're saying, some people might perceive that as quitting. I perceive that as knowing when to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a no, I heard a really, I can't remember, I'm going to have to look up his name and put him in, like, because I want to give him credit, but this guy who wrote a book about the potential that things like ADD and ADHD are actually not mental disorders. They are natural human responses to acute childhood traumas that are very specific. And one of the things he said was, when a no comes up for you, if you don't say it, it will manifest in your life in another way, meaning you will get sick, you will get tired, you will become irritable eventually, and you will start to lash out. People who live their life never saying no when they want to usually ultimately end up with all kinds of things like cancer. And the way that, this is what he said, I don't know if that's true, right?
Yeah.
But what I do know is I was raised in a way where if you say no and somebody else really wants you to do something, you're kind of a bad person. And I don't think that was intentional, but that's the effect that my upbringing had on me. And what I realized after living that way for a long time was, it feels like you're being a good person by doing something you don't really want to do to help someone else, just because they ask you. But that develops resentment.
Yeah.
And it creates depression and anxiety. And then when you live that way for years and years and years, like I was saying before, you become totally depleted and you can't take care of yourself anymore. So I had to kind of rewire my way of thinking in my 30s to understand that, like, it's great that I want to help people. It's great that I want to be positive and say yes, but I can only say yes to what I have the capability to actually do, right?
Yeah.
And saying no to someone, if you really don't want to do something, is actually kinder, because you're being real first, and they know exactly where you two stand. And then also, have you ever like been at an event with a friend that really didn't want to be there, and they make it obvious the whole time?
Yeah.
That is like, I think you're not fooling people as well as you think you are when you do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you might show up to the thing you said yes to that you think you're being supportive and going to, and you didn't want to be there, but that energy will kind of like seep out of you, and it sort of muddies the water for everybody in the situation. So yeah, I think this episode is great for teaching people how and when to say no, specifically that speech. So I'm going to put it in here. And let's get into one of my favorite battles of Season 1.
Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast, will return after these messages. And now, more Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast.
You traitor! I can't believe you let the Negaverse turn you against us! You're the enemy!
So glad we got that straight, Mercury. Now please, back off. I really have no desire to hurt you, okay? It's your boyfriend I'm after, not you.
Never!
You really think you can stop me with those silly bubbles? Ha! Stay back, Mercury!
Let him go, Darian!
Not a chance. So long, Mercury.
Why do you want him? Let him go! You can't turn those people against us anymore! They don't have any crystals for you! I'm warning you, Darian. Let Greg and the rest of them go!
Ha! Idle threats. Both you and I know it. Now there's only one left, that grandfather. But if you really want to go for it, that's fine with me, Mercury. You'll lose, of course. Hey, I thought you'd be glad to see your old friend Tuxedo Unmasked again.
He's not the Tuxedo Mask who was the Sailor Scout's trusted friend. Mercury Bubbles! Blast!
Ha! Same tired old tricks. Hey! Queen Barrel's crystal!
Dangerous to underestimate your enemy. Barrel's a lousy teacher. Now I'm going to set these people free.
They're free! So I see.
Oh, wow!
How'd you get the crystal? You did it all alone? Just you against him?
I guess all Luna's training finally paid off.
Hey, these are the rainbow crystal carriers. Are they okay?
Prince Darien shows up and attacks Greg and Mercury, and she decides to take him on alone. I want to examine this battle a little more closely, too. So, the first bubble spray really doesn't do anything, and remind me who our voice actress is for Mercury right now. What's her name?
Oh, the first Deke one?
Yeah, it's Liza?
No, it's Karen Bernstein.
That's right, Karen Bernstein. Okay. This is one of those moments for her that she, I think, does so well because everybody knows I like her like throaty effect that she can do with the bubble thing, but it's less about that this time, and it's more about she delivers the repeated lines in a nuanced, different way, and you can almost hear like the oomph. Like you can hear the inner dialogue of her being like, this has to work. She pushes that through with her delivery of these lines in a way that is so, I think, fantastic. And then it's complemented so well by the animation with like, that shows her with tears in her eyes and this anger. And we get, the frames with like red behind her. It's very dramatic.
Yeah. The
way they animated it. And then the second time she uses bubbles, it's a non-stock animation attack, which are my favorite. And we get to see her running. She you get the orb comes up while she's like running, and she turns and uses it from another direction at him, which was a tactical choice. How does he fend off the bubbles here? Do you remember the second time?
Yeah, he spins the...
Yeah, him being a little more able to do things when he's evil, apparently. Because that was a cool trick that he could use his tuxedo mask, I thought, when he's helping them. But yeah, and I loved the sound effect for the popping bubbles here for some reason. I don't know why. I don't even know what it is, but it sounds cool. And yeah, so Mercury defeats him by herself and breaks the dark crystal, freeing everyone that he's captured. Can we just take a second and acknowledge that Sailor Jupiter challenged Evil Prince Darien alone and lost? Mercury, who has bubbles and a computer and a brain and a visor, I guess, that she didn't use, challenged him alone. And not only did she defeat him, but she also freed everyone that he captured, which is something that usually, like, that's kind of a big deal. And she did all of this with just using bubbles in her brain. And I think it's such a great example of why her character's in the show, first of all. But second of all, people who, like, are maybe perceived as weak for certain reasons.
Yeah.
Can be just as strong as someone who is assumed strong. You just might not realize it, I guess, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What is your takeaway from this battle for her character development and all that?
I agree with the same thing. I mean, it happens in an even larger, more significant, surprising circumstance with the final episodes of the season coming up very soon. With what she does. So it's always cool to see her character do things that are more fierce and strong.
Yeah, and I think it means more coming from a character like her because the guts that it, like, okay, Jupiter knows what her abilities are, right? She knows she is physically very strong. She's a physical fighter, and she has an electrical attack that's very powerful. Mercury's smart. She knows she's not physically that strong. She knows all she has are bubbles. And she's still brave enough to do that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
It demonstrates a level of perseverance that I think is a little bit higher than some of the other characters, only because she has to be that way. But yeah, after she defeats him, the rest of the girls show up, and we get several speeches. Did anything significant come up here in the dialogue in the Japanese?
It was more just a funny thing. Like when Mercury is fighting Tuxedo Unmasked, there's a screen cap of her with the subtitles. That's another thing that's gotten iconic in like the modern generation of this stuff. She says like it's time to take a cold shower and reflect on what you've done. And then when the other girls show up, Usagi says, you know, if you're into, like referencing Mamoru capturing people and using them again as monsters, he's like, she just says if you're into doing this, then you should just stick to recycling.
Why recycling?
You know,
oh, because they're reusing the same thing?
Yeah.
That's such a reach for a joke. That's so funny. No, it wasn't that. I didn't have any notes about the deep dialogue, so I think it was pretty light and whatever. I like that, though. I think that's cute. But that's not a very long moment, is it? It's pretty quick.
No, yeah.
And then they're right back into the action because we have Mercury and Jupiter attack Tuxedo Unmasked together. And I'm not sure, isn't this the second time we see the combo of Bubbles and Thunder?
I don't remember the other one, but
I think it might have included someone else in the other one. But I love the way they animate it, where it's basically used to create like a chain of thunder and water that traps him so he can't move, right? And I guess is weakening him.
Yeah.
And then Sailor Moon tries to heal him using her wand. And I guess because I'm doing, or actually because you're doing it too. We started doing the card captors stuff. This reminds me a lot of the way in that show the main character Sakura might use a card like Windy, which is known to be more gentle and won't actually hurt someone or something, to capture a card that is not malicious. Or maybe is just acting out, but not from like a bad, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I don't want to hurt you, which I kind of feel like was, I'm sure it didn't feel lovely to Prince Darien, but this seemed like kind of a gentle way of handling him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of reminded me a little bit of that. Is there anything? Oh, and then he looks healed, right? We think we get this moment where it seems like it worked. And what happens?
She has to, or Luna says that you have to use the moon healing escalation and then use more energy with it. You see a little clip of him getting his memories back as Mamoru. After he collapses and he's been restored to normal, then he immediately disappears with Queen Beryl's black bubble thing. He's immediately put back into the mind control skull coffin, whatever, and she's just saying that she'll have to do the same thing over again, but this time put even more effort into changing him to be a servant for the Dark Kingdom than before.
Yeah, she's essentially frustrated that she has to start over, though, right? This process of brainwashing. And I mean, I think the plot device of having him turn evil in season 1 is pretty strong, and I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah.
In a way that there are certain times in later seasons when he's not being the best, and I don't think it plays quite as well as it does here.
Yeah.
Because this, where it's like Queen Beryl has an invested interest in him, we see her actively brainwashing him. We know the history now between Darian and Serena, so we know that he would never really do that of his own volition. And it's just a lot more clear, I think. Plus, I think I like his Prince Darian outfit a lot, and I think we get to see him in that a lot more this season. So maybe that's part of it. But what is our final scene this episode?
It's the girls going to that same carnival, that little carnival that was shown earlier, and Ami and Rio are on the Ferris wheel together, just having a nice, cute time. They're all just saying that, or while Usagi and Rei are jealous about it, and then Makoto is the voice of reason and just says that we should just let them have their time and hang out here a little bit longer. And then the last image is both like Rio blushing and Ami smiling at him in a heart-shaped outline.
Want to go around one more time?
Sure.
How long are they gonna ride that thing? Now, who does she think she is? This is so totally rude, leaving us here standing and waiting, and completely starved.
Whatever you said to her, Lita, must have really worked.
What?
What's the matter, Serena? You'd think you're jealous or something.
Stuff it, stinge face.
Hey, come on, you guys, don't start. Let's just be happy for Amy, okay?
Yeah, one day you guys will have boyfriends too.
Serena, not a
Look,
chance.
who's talking, wallflower?
You sure hung on to Tuxedo Unmasked.
And we have a brief moment of the rest of them talking down at like Serena and all of the girls chatting and looking up at them. And Serena is kind of like doing this thing where she's sort of grumpy about being left out. And I think this is a great point about her character where she like just doesn't get it, like why they would want to be alone for some reason. And she's also going on about food and how she's hungry and all that. It's a reminder how affable she is and how she is very like, hard on her. It's hard on her sleeve. It's a very her moment. And I think these little micro moments that we get with the group and the way they interact are so important. And it's one of, like, they build up over time, and I've said this before, I think they are what make the 90s version of Sailor Moon specifically so incredible. Let's rate the episode. Are you ready?
I'd give it a 4.
Why 4?
It's mainly just because of the, even though this particular animator, Akira Nakamura, this is probably the best episode that he did. He only did episodes in season 1, and all the other episodes are just very average, animation-wise. So the only subtraction that I'm giving it is just for if it had a better animator. But even though the most well done scenes in this episode are very well done, it would have been really amazing if somebody like Tadano or Ito or Kagawa did it.
I hear you. I think I'm just a little less focused on the animation, just because that's the way I think about it. So
yeah.
For me, it's a 5 out of 5 plus 3 bonus stars that the listeners can choose whether or not they honor. I don't really care. So if you don't want to count the bonus stars, that's fine. But I'll start. The reason it's just a solid 5 for me as an episode on its own is because first, I like it because it is a Sailor Mercury centered episode, but I like that it's not only about her. If you really pay attention, it's more her and Jupiter together. And it's about their relationship as friends and how they, like I was saying, how they complement one another's personalities so well. I think that point is really fantastic. I think also, after having so many episodes in a row that are kind of what we were saying, like the filler vacation series almost,
Yeah.
That are a lot more light and just kind of, I don't know how to describe them. It's like the stakes are a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
I think going from that to this one, it elevates the stakes immediately in a way that feels exciting. It reminds us what we were dealing with before, like by bringing back the rainbow crystals in a way that I thought was really smart, or like the Rainbow Crystal Warriors. So we get that reminder of them. And then it's extremely action-packed. We have 3 separate battles, technically.
Yeah.
And all of them are done in a unique way. None of them feel cookie cutter. So I think as far as the content quality of this episode goes, it is above and beyond most of season 1. I do agree with you, though, about the animation. It would have been fabulous if it was Ito or something. But because we're on this animation journey with all of the animators, right? And we know this guy has had issues in the past. I'm kind of like cheering for him that he did such a good job on this one, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, it's 5 stars plus 3 bonus stars. It gets a bonus star for the Mercury and Jupiter synergy. It gets a bonus star for just the overall content of the episode. And then it gets a bonus star for how exciting and action-packed it is. Anything you want to add about your rating or anything like that?
That's it.
All right. Sailor says,
Just because Tuxedo Mask was taken back by the Negaforce doesn't mean I'm giving up on him. After all, for a minute there, I had the old Tuxedo Mask back again.
There's a lot to be said for persistence.
Right. If you want something badly enough, you have to be willing to work for it.
Don't get discouraged.
Yeah, because if you do give up, for sure you won't get what you want.
Don't let roadblocks stop you from getting your dreams. Sailor Moon says.
This one is about persistence and not giving up. And if you want something badly enough, you have to be willing to work for it. Don't let roadblocks stop you from getting your dreams. And I think I mentioned earlier the mixed message. The reason I think it's a mixed message is it's like they were saying how self-sacrifice is not always the thing. Sometimes you have to stop and think things through. And I think in that instance, they try to connect self-sacrifice to giving up with Mercury's speech. And I think in some cases it is, but not always. So let's try to clarify a little bit. What does persistence mean to you in a real-life context?
Continue trying to achieve something that you want to happen in a polite and safe way that doesn't affect anybody else in a negative way.
I think that's kind of how we all wish to pursue it, right? I think sometimes we are shown on TV, or the things that seem celebrated are persistence to the point of system failure, almost. And when I say system failure, I mean you just lose, like I was saying before, you lose the ability to function kind of properly because you have tried so hard about something and you're not pausing, not giving up, but pausing to take certain breaks maybe, that would give you the energy to keep going and be successful, right?
Yeah.
So I think a very realistic model of persistence might be, well, your career with your interviews, I think, is actually a great example because you don't do them every single day, but there are times when you are doing them very, very frequently. And then there are times when you have a week or 2 weeks off in between. But whether or not it's happening all at once or slowly, you just keep going, right?
Yeah.
And I think whether or not, I don't know, because you're younger, so you probably have more energy just generally still than I do. But I think those breaks that you get probably help you keep going without feeling burnout, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've got, how many interviews are you at now? We've already passed 300. Where are we at?
Yeah. I'm checking the number exactly just to make sure it's at 305.
Yeah, so persistence, that is a great example of how just walking at the pace that feels natural for you ahead and pausing when you need to, as in terms of your career, begets success.
Mm-hmm.
What about, what are some roadblocks that might come up, and how can you identify if it's a door being closed that you should listen to and just something that's in your way that you should overcome? Because I think that's sort of confusing.
In that kind of situation, I really only deal with that with interviews, just in the sense that sometimes with really big names for voice actors that it can take a really long time for it to finally happen. But even with how annoying it can be with being patient, you just have to remember to be kind and word things really well each time. Because that was the case where, with what happened when I did my 300th interview, Keith Silverstein, who is Dr. Tomo in the Viz dub, I first messaged him a year and a half ago, and it was finally the third time that I reached out to him, back in the summer or whenever I had it that it finally did happen. So that's an example of a roadblock that's in most cases easy to overcome, and you will overcome. You just have to wait a long time sometimes.
Well, and I think that's a great example because I think one of the keys to life is developing patience.
Yeah.
And I actually think that we've sort of, I'm sure this is obvious to some listeners, and we probably also both sort of knew this already too, but I guess persistence is kind of the heart of the show because it is sort of the theme of every single finale. My thought was, for some reason, I have a lot of issues with Sailor Stars in terms of the pacing and the fact that they can't attack the Sailor phages and all that. But I think what comes to mind for me is the scene with the 3 Sailor Stars after literally, like, I think everyone else has died except for Sailor Moon and them. And it's the last time they attack Galaxia. And you get that final music sting that belongs to the Sailor Stars. And they all use their final... Like, you have their attacks get, like, better. They animate them better as the show goes on.
Mm-hmm.
You get, like, the final version of that. And then I think the way the Japanese voice actors handled that with just... the way they delivered the determined stuff, it hits so freaking good in the Japanese version. That moment to me, because it really does feel like they lost already in that moment. It feels hopeless, and they're like, we're going to try anyway. And I think that is the heart of the show. So tell us your favorite examples of persistence, and I challenge you to be better than us and not reference a finale, because I almost feel like it's the easy way out. So we both took the easy way out. We both referenced a finale. Look for a little more nuanced examples if you guys are going to leave us some comments. And I can't wait to see what you say. All right, I think that's it for this episode. And next week is the Sailor Venus one, right?
Yeah.
All right, so the next one, you guys, I believe we're going to be doing the Fighter for Love fan dub of this episode, and I'm going to also look for any other fan dubs that exist so I can let you know what the options are for people who are interested in that, because I'm sure this episode got a lot because it's one of the missing ones that was like very important. I guess it's like one that they cut that I felt like hit the hardest. So I'm excited to do that. All right, are you ready for the Card Captors one? Episode 4.
Let me see which one are we on. Let me see which one that is.
We talked about Watery last time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's it for this week's episode of Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast. I just wanted to thank you guys for being so encouraging and supportive. We've gotten a lot of really enthusiastic responses from us returning after being gone for a year. Even a message directly through the website, which is fairly unusual. And I shared that one with Chris, and that was really sweet from a fan. I don't want to really put him on blast and share the whole message here unless they reach out and say that I can. But you know who you are, listener. So thank you for writing in, because as much as we made your day, that kind of message makes our day in return. So it's a great exchange, of energy. But yeah, this was a fun episode, at least for me. I'm curious to see if other people are just kind of in the middle on it, or where you guys land. You know where Chris and I stand, so definitely put your opinions in the comments about this one. And I'd like to just put some feelers out there. Anyone who is listening that is also a fan of drag, if you have any clips or links to clips of Sailor Moon meets drag, I know Chris and I have sort of chatted about this subject before, feel free to send them directly to us. You can find out how by going to www.moonstarpod.com. See you next week.
For more of Chris, you can find him on all platforms at Chris Mayek. That's Chris, Mayek. For more of Alex, you can find him on Instagram at AlexSummersSFE. Be sure to follow the Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast Facebook page for exclusive updates and media you can't get anywhere else. You can visit the official Moonstar website at www.moonstarpod.com. Moonstar is brought to you in part by Sailor Moon Video. Shop authentic Sailor Moon VHS and DVDs today at www.sailormoonvideo.com. Use offer code MOONSTAR to save 10%. Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast, is intended for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We claim no ownership over any licensed and/or copyrighted audio clips, sound effects, or other materials used during the creation of our show. All audio clips, sound effects, and any other licensed or copyrighted materials used during the creation of this show, or any content created in relation to Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast, belong expressly to the license and copyright holders.
You wanna bet? You picked the wrong enemy. I am Sailor Moon, champion of justice, and on behalf of the moon, I will right wrongs and triumph over evil. And that means you. Jupiter Thunder! Mercury
Sailor Moon, use your moon wand!
I'm on it, Luna.
What's happening? I feel so strange. Where are all these images coming from?
It's working, Sailor Moon! Don't give up. Just a bit more.
No! Let me go!
You did it, Sailor Moon! It's the old Darien!
It's really him.
Way to go, Sailor Moon!
Oh!
He's gone!
It's Beryl.
I really thought we'd gotten him back. No, not again.